Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. We have Lewis here with us, and I'm just going to go ahead and let you introduce yourself.
Sure. My name is Lewis Land. I work for the National Cave and Karst Research Institute, which is a subdivision of New Mexico Tech in Socorro. I work in their Carlsbad office down in the southeast corner of the state. And I should explain, my position there is officially karst hydrologist. Hydrologist is a type of earth scientist that studies water supply, groundwater, water resources, and things like that. And a karst hydrologist studies water that is stored in karst aquifers. I should explain that karst is a word that refers to a type of landscape that is formed when the bedrock gets dissolved by circulating groundwater, and it leaves these void spaces, specifically caves and sinkholes. So if you live in an area where there are lots of caves and lots of sinkholes, like say Central Florida, Western Kentucky, or Southeastern New Mexico, you are living on a karst landscape. And because that circulating groundwater dissolves out these holes in the rock, that leaves space for groundwater to be stored. So when we talk about a karst aquifer, we mean a type of a rock formation that can store water in these big void spaces, like cavities and conduits in the rock. So I study specifically those types of aquifers.
Very cool. Very cool. So the first question I have for you, where did you get your start? When you were younger, did you know where your passions lie? Like, what were your interests, and did they match the same now? And kind of just what was your process?
Well, I just kind of stumbled into the earth sciences back a long time ago when I was in my mid-20s, and I had dropped out of college and was just working at this really low-level job, making barely more than minimum wage, and decided that I wanted to improve my circumstances and get some decent stereo equipment, which was a big deal in those days. You know, we didn't have musical, we didn't have live streaming music. You had to have a record player, and you had to have speakers, an amplifier, and all that stuff. So anyway, I decided I wanted to better myself. So I thought, well, I'll go back to college and study something that'll let me make a little bit more money so I can buy decent stereo equipment. Geology was just something I thought, well, a friend of mine had just gotten a geology degree, and he was working for the U.S. Geological Survey, and he had a pretty good job. And I thought, well, I guess I could do that. It would be better than being like an accountant or a lawyer or something. And so I didn't really know hardly anything at all about the geosciences, but I just got really, really fascinated by it when I took my first introductory geology class. And I went into class one day, and we were watching a movie about this volcanic island that had emerged from beneath the waves off the coast of Iceland. And it was fascinating, all of these volcanic eruptions and stories about continental drift and plate tectonics. And I was just on the edge of my seat. I was so excited.
Cool. Yeah.
I had not decided to major in geology at that time. That was my first semester back in school, but I was thinking about it, and that kind of sealed the deal. And I just went to my undergraduate advisor and said, all right, I'm majoring in geology, even though I have to take a lot of math, which I greatly feared at the time. I was not in high school, but I ended up taking 3 semesters of calculus and 8 A's.
Wow. It's kind of crazy how that worked out like that.
Yeah. So anyway, that was it. And so I ended up getting my bachelor's degree and went to work in the oil industry in Oklahoma for about 8 years. And that's really interesting. At the time that I decided to major in geology, I was so clueless that I did not even know that petroleum companies employ geologists. That's one of the few fields in the geosciences where you can make a lot of money doing geology. And I made pretty good money for 8 years. And then the price of oil tanked, and the oil companies started cutting staff, and they eventually laid me off. So I went back to school and got 2 more degrees and decided to refocus on water resources and become a hydrologist, because the employment cycles are not as extreme in that field. You know, in the oil industry, you just live and die by the price of oil. When the price of oil is high, your employer loves you and wishes you with money. And when the price of oil is low, then as far as they're concerned, they're overstaffed, and the quickest way to save money is to start letting people go. So in water resources and hydrology and geology, those employment cycles do not exist. You don't make as much money, but it's steady employment. So that's one of the reasons I went that route.
Yeah. Very nice. So the next question I have for you is, what do you find the most interesting in the work you do in general?
Oh, in general, I like the fieldwork aspect of my job is probably the most interesting.
Mm-hmm.
There's people in the geosciences very often get into the geosciences because they like working in the outdoors. They don't realize until after they get to graduate school and it's too late that 90% of their time is going to be spent sitting in front of a computer documenting the work that they did when they were out in the field. But I think most people in my line of work would say that they love doing the field work more than anything else. And one rewarding aspect of that is just you go out, you collect data in the field using various different types of geological tools, and then pulling all of that information together and telling a story and explaining to people why this work is important.
So another question I have for you is, do you have a mentor or anyone in your life that kind of has been helping you, like a driving force in your life?
I would say my doctoral advisor, his name was Charlie Paul. He now works for the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute. But I worked on my PhD for, goodness, it took me about 7 years altogether. And Charlie and I worked on several papers and proposals together. My writing style was greatly influenced by the way Charlie wrote. Oh. And I always felt like no matter, even when I screwed up, Charlie was still there for me.
Awesome. So it helps to have someone like that in your life for sure.
It really does, yeah.
And so the last question I have for you, do you have any advice you would like to give just to the community or anyone who's watching? Yeah.
If I was talking to some young person thinking about a future career, I would say, well, the geosciences is a fascinating field, but even if you do something completely different, like say you go to work in business administration and you run a bread factory, just do something that you love. I remember hearing Jack Lemmon talk about the old actor Jack Lemmon talking about how his father actually did run a bread factory, and he said, and his father told Jack Lemmon, you've got to really go in there every day, loving to make bread. So if you do what you love, if you do something that you really love, then there will be times when you'll make a lot of money, and there may be times when you're just flat broke.
Yeah.
So that's what I tried to convey to my son when he was in high school, and to my stepson when he was in high school, and just do something that you have a passion for.
Yeah. Very well put. All right, Lewis, I just want to thank you for taking the time to do this interview with us. We really appreciate you just sharing your life and your stories with us.
Okay, sure. Thank you. I'm always happy to share information with folks.